All right, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of National Career Development Week, where we are going to be talking about how to ace your interviews. My name is Nathan Messenger, and I am a career coach at the Sellersburg campus of Ivy Tech Community College in the Department of CCEC, or Career Coaching and Employer Connections. And so today, we're going to talk about a couple things. So here's our agenda. We're going to talk about why you got the interview. We're going to go over how to prepare for the interview, what to do during that interview, and how you should follow up after the interview's done. Then we're going to talk about elevator pitches, why they're important and how they can be useful to you. And then we're going to do some key takeaways, the most important things from this presentation. And we'll have time for questions at the end. So to begin, why you got the interview. So the company has seen your resume, you've applied, they've looked over your whole application, and they know that you are someone who is qualified and has the necessary skills to do the job or handle the responsibilities of the job that you've applied for. And so you're qualified and they want to learn more about who you are as a person. So this gives you the opportunity to know that you don't have to show them that you're qualified all over again. This allows you to go in with some confidence. They already know that you're someone that they may want to hire for this job. You've reached that point, which is incredible. And so just go in with some confidence. And you really just want to treat the interview like a conversation. They want to get to know more about you and who you are as a person and what you've done in the past. And you are at the same time have the opportunity to learn more about them and who their company is and what kind of things really go into the position beyond what's described in the job description that you've read. And so you just want to make sure that you get across why you're excited about this position and how your past experiences and your skills and your education make you the person that's the best fit for that position. And so when you're preparing for your interview, these are things you want to do before you even show up the day of. You need to read the job description. That should be the very first thing that you do when you start preparing for the job. You need to make sure that, or preparing for the interview, excuse me, you need to make sure that you know everything that's supposed to be going on in the position you've applied for. You need to know what kind of skills and qualifications are necessary and that you actually do meet those skills. You also need to research the company. You need to know a little bit about them before you go into this interview. They're going to ask you why you want to work for this company, and you need to be able to give them a good answer that shows that you've done some research into who they are, into the products that they make, or what they do as a company, what kind of services they offer. Know who their target audience is. You don't want to answer questions thinking that the target audience is children when this company actually makes products for adults. Also know the history of the organization. Know a little bit about how they got started, where they came from, what kind of products they maybe started with, and how they've expanded in the past. Knowing a little bit about the history and who that company is allows you to kind of formulate your answers a little better based on, where that company's been and where it looks like they're going. You also want to research the interviewers that are going to be asking you these questions on interview day. You can find all these people on LinkedIn, and you can maybe even find connections or things you have in common. This allows you to make conversation flow a little more easily. If you can say, oh, maybe we both went to the same college, or maybe we both follow or are members of this same group or organization within, the field that we're working in, things like that. And that allows you to just find this connection and have things go a little more smoothly on interview day. You also want to plan out the outfit that you're going to wear on interview day. You need to know what type of dress is expected. You need to wear a black tie dressed to the nines, or is it more of a, jeans and a t-shirt type of interview, depending on what industry you're going into. You can ask the recruiter or the HR person or whoever calls you to schedule this interview. You can say, what kind of outfit is expected to me if you're really not sure. And if you can't find an answer, you want to go with a very, professional dress. Maybe not full on tuxedo, but kind of a nice shirt and a tie is a pretty safe bet for men. And then kind of nice pants, a blouse, something like that is great for ladies. You want to avoid things that are incredibly bright or distracting. When you go to an interview, you really want the information to focus on you and who you are and why your skills and qualifications make you the best fit for the job. You don't want to be remembered as the person who wore the bright red tie or the bright pink power suit. I heard a story about a networking event that people went to, and there was a woman there who came dressed in a bright pink suit. And at the end of the event, no one remembered anything about what she did, her qualifications, who she was, even her name. They just knew that she was the woman that wore the bright pink suit. And so you don't want to be the person that gets remembered for something other than why you're the best fit for the position. You also want to practice your answers to lots of common questions. Nearly every interview that you're going to go to is going to start off with a question like, tell me about yourself, or something very similar. So you want to have something prepared and ready to go allows you to talk about yourself in a professional sense. When answering those types of questions, they don't want to know that you maybe have 5 dogs. They don't want to know that you play video games on the weekend. They want to know who you are professionally. How does your professional life and who you are professionally benefit them in the position that they're about to attempt to hire you for? Why this company or role? We just talked about why it's important to research that company and know a little bit about what they do. And why the role? Why is this position exciting for you specifically? Why do you want to do this kind of job? These are things that you have to think about before you go in there so you don't get caught off guard and have to stop and think like, oh, why do I want to be, a network analyst or something like that? And think of examples of times that you found success in the past. Think of projects that you've done that turned out really well at the end. Think about times maybe at work or in your extracurricular activities, your clubs or something like that, where you took on a leadership role and things turned out really nice, or you maybe had a difficult challenge that you were facing. How did you overcome that? What kind of things went well? What did you do that allowed you to achieve success in those situations that may have been a little bit tough at the time? Because these are things that these employers want to know about, that you're able to persevere through things that may be difficult for other people. The world changed, as we all know, with the COVID-19 or international world pandemic. And so along with that, the workplace changed, the workplace life changed, and getting hired changed a little bit as well. And so interviews are a lot more common to do than virtually nowadays. And so it's important for you to know, one, what kind of format is your interview going to be in on interview day? Are you expected to show up at the location where you may be working, or are they going to do something virtual through Zoom or Cisco or any of those other interviewing platforms? Or I guess video communication platforms is better. So if your interview is in person, things that you should do: plan to arrive 15 minutes early. This makes sure that you have time just in case there's some traffic on the way there. Maybe you get lost, you can't find parking. You want to have time padded in there so you can make sure that you're able to show up on time for this interview. If you arrive late, it's going to automatically give them a terrible first impression of you right off the bat. A good thing to do if you have time, especially if your interview is in a place that maybe you've never been before, maybe a new city, go the night before, the day before, kind of scope out the place, drive around, see where parking's at, find the door that you're supposed to go in. Just make sure that you know exactly what to do in the morning when you show up for your interview. Bring a notebook and a pen. It's great to take notes, and it looks great for you to take notes in the interview. If you learn something new about the job or about the company that you find interesting, write it down. This is also going to allow you to have things to remember by and connect with the interviewers later when you send your thank you notes that we'll talk about. Bring copies of your resume. This is a great thing just to have ready, even if you don't end up using them. Having them on standby just looks really nice on you. You can bring a Padfolio or even just stick them in a notebook. Just have a few, usually 3 or so printed copies of your resume. Odds are your interviewers may have them already. If you submitted a resume when you applied, they may have them printed already. But just in case if they don't have them, it looks really nice if you can just pull them out and say, oh, here's my resume for you to look over. Be respectful of every person that you encounter on interview day. You never know who is really taking part in your interview. There's been instances when receptionists, when you check in, are part of the interview process. They'll report back to the interviewers and say, oh, I really liked this person. They were really kind to me when they checked in, or maybe someone was a little bit rude, and that could look bad on you because you never know who's going to talk to the people that you're interviewing with. Same thing goes for security guards and parking attendants. Just make sure that you're kind and respectful to everyone on that day. If your interview is virtual, make sure you find out what kind of platform it's going to be, and that gives you a chance to download any software that you might need on your computer if you don't have it already, and it just prevents you taking the chance on being late because things on your computer side weren't ready. Dress just like you would for an in-person interview. Ensure that you're ready to go, dressed up professionally, whatever it is for the industry that you're going into. Wear pants is a huge thing to have when you're interviewing virtually. There was a video that went around a while ago of someone who's being interviewed on national television that looked really nice from the waist up. And then for some reason, his laptop fell over forward and he wasn't wearing any pants. And everyone on that national TV that was watching that interview saw, that he wasn't wearing pants. And so better safe than sorry, just wear pants. Make sure that you look fully professional, dressed the same way you would for an in-person interview, just to be safe. Look into the camera. This one's very difficult to do because especially if there's faces showing up, you want to look at the people. But making eye contact is still an important thing, even virtually. And so looking into the camera can be a huge help and just make you come across a lot better and more focused on the people that you're interviewing. Make sure your internet connection is reliable. If you can't trust your internet connection at home, maybe go to campus where you have a reliable internet connection, the library, somewhere where you can find a quiet place that's going to allow you to have an uninterrupted interview. Make sure you've got good lighting. Nobody wants to talk to someone who's hidden in the shadows or who doesn't have their camera on or something like that. Make sure that they're able to see you clearly, and then log in 5 minutes early. Just like you want to show up early for your interview, you want to make sure that you log in early, just in case there is some kind of technology issue or something happens where you're not able to get into that interview at the right time. So logging in early, make sure that you just have time to make sure everything's prepared and goes smoothly when your interview starts. On interview day, so first impressions matter. So shaking hands with everyone is a great way to go. With COVID now, a lot of places are not doing handshakes. Some are doing like an elbow touch or a fist bump, something like that. You can kind of let the people interviewing you take the lead on that one a little bit right now. Or you can just ask, like, are you shaking hands or something like that. If they are shaking hands, shake each person's hand as you go down the line. Welcome everyone. Be very positive from the moment that you show up there until the time that you leave that interview, even if it's not going well or you feel like it's not going well. Sometimes just having that positive attitude is enough to make you stand apart from other people who may also be having tough interviews. Be friendly, be kind to everyone that you meet, just like we said with the receptionists and the parking attendants. You never know who is going to be reporting back about you on that interview. And even if someone walks by when you're sitting in the waiting room, don't be playing on your phone, be kind of aware, just looking around, listening, maybe smiling a little bit more than you normally would. This just lets people know that you're, focused on what's going on around you. I showed up for an interview once and someone asked me about when I was sitting in the waiting room. They said they walked by and saw my face and that I didn't look super excited. And they came back and talked to the other people and said, oh, I don't know how this interview is going to go. And so people are paying attention, even if you think that they're not. And it could come back to bite you if you're not looking, positive and welcoming and available to answer questions and talk to people. Let them know you're grateful for their time that day. Even when you first get there, just say, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I'm excited to learn more about you, this company, and this position, and let you learn more about me at the same time. And then make appropriate eye contact. So when you're virtually, you kind of want to keep it a little bit more steady. When you're in person, you don't want to have, laser beam eyes, like staring at someone just like a robot. So you want to like look away for a little bit, usually about 80-20, 70-30 is a good ratio. So like 80% eye contact and then looking away. It's a lot easier when you've got multiple people because you can go from person to person. And if you have a panel, focus on the person who's asking you the questions specifically a little bit more than the others, because then you'll move down the line and you'll get that good eye contact with each individual when they are asking the question. Answer all questions honestly and use real life examples that are your life when possible. And so there's different types of questions, which we'll talk about in just a minute. There's situational and behavioral questions are becoming much more common. And these are things where you want to use an example, especially of some kind of achievement or something that you've done that specifically shows how you meet the need that they're asking about in that question. Never be negative about any previous employers or companies. Even if you had a terrible experience at that company, you want to make it sound like it was positive and you left things on good terms. This is very important because if an interviewer hears you speaking about a different company in a negative light, they're going to assume that if something happens and you leave their company, you're going to go out and tarnish their reputation and speak negatively about them as well. So you want to avoid any kind of negativity like that in your interviews. You can just say, even if it was a totally negative experience, you can say something like, it was time for me to pursue other opportunities. And so I made the decision to move on from that company. It's simple, it doesn't give them anything negative about that company at all. And it just allows you to kind of seamlessly move into the next topic of the interview. When you're answering questions, take responsibility for things that maybe went wrong. It's okay to say that things went wrong and talk about what you did when things happened, but don't blame everything on someone else. Own up to the things that you did. If something, went wrong at your last job, a project missed a deadline. It's okay. Don't blame like, oh, the rest of my team didn't get their things done on time. My stuff was all perfect, blah, blah, blah. Let them know that, my team didn't work seamlessly together. Things got missed, but at the end of the day, we worked together to, get the project done on time better than was expected, even though it was a little bit late. There's also illegal and inappropriate interview questions. There are things that people are not allowed to ask you about in a job interview. And so these are things that involve your race, your age, your gender, religion, marital status, sexual orientation, things that really can be discriminated against in the hiring process. And places will sometimes find ways to get around asking directly to kind of still get the answers to these questions. And so you need to be paying attention when something like this comes up to know and be able to say like, oh, I'd rather focus on my qualifications for the job. Or you can ask them, what does that have to do with my qualifications or my skills to complete what's required of this job? Something like that, just to get it back on track. And so I saw a story recently about someone who was interviewing for a medical residency, about to finish medical school. And the panel asked her, instead of saying, are you planning to have kids or something like that? They said, when you're, have a night out, would you hang out with a mom's group, or would you be more likely to go out with the girls that go out on the town? And so what they're really asking is, do you have kids, or are you planning to have kids, in a way that, doesn't immediately come off as, oh, that's an illegal interview question, you can't ask me about that. And so you really have to be paying attention and in the moment when they're asking you these questions, so you're aware of, them asking you something that they're not allowed to ask you about. And so common types of interview questions. And so we're going to talk about what these look like, how they might sound, and then we're going to go over a really great method to answer these so you nail it every single time. And so behavioral-based questions, these are going to be things where they ask you how you handle the situation or how you went about doing something. And so these are going to be things that you have done in the past. So tell me about a time when you faced a difficult situation. Tell me about a time when you had to work with someone who maybe you didn't get along with. Give me an example of a time when you had to overcome a late deadline or something like that. So situational questions are going to be more about kind of future times. So how would you go about it if someone disrespected you in the office? How would you handle it if one of your team members was late on a deadline? What would you do if you received some criticism from your boss that you didn't agree with? Things like that. And then there's the more traditional interview questions that are the tell me about yourself, what are your strengths and your weaknesses, and the why do you want to work for our company? And so organizations are moving away from the traditional interview questions a little bit. Odds are you'll still get a few of them, but they're really focusing a lot on the behavioral and the situational based questions because it gives them a chance to learn a lot more about you as an employee and as a professional than do the traditional questions. And so the method for answering the situational and behavioral questions, a great way to knock it out of the park every time, is what's called the STAR method. And so if someone said, what would you do if you were faced with a difficult situation? The way you're going to answer this is give them a situation or task that describes that situation that's related to the question. Then you're going to say what action you took or would take to solve that problem. And then what was the result of your work? How did you go about fixing or solving that situation or task or accomplishing the goal of that task? And this just allows you to give them a well-rounded answer that lets them see exactly how you would handle the situation or how you have handled the situation and how it turned out positively at the end of the day because of the work that you did. And so it's a great way to just kind of have focused, succinct answers to those types of questions and prevents you from rambling on and on and on because you may think you're a little bit lost answering that type of question. And so if you get asked a question that maybe is an experience that you've never had to deal with an incredibly difficult coworker or something like that, it's okay to say something like, oh, I've been lucky enough to never be in that situation, but if I were, this is what I would do. And then you would go into the, STAR method and you kind of change it just a little bit to fit your needs because you don't want to lie or make things up in an interview. You want to make sure that you're honest every time when you answer these questions. So on interview day, being prepared. So when they're finished asking you questions and you're done answering them, they're going to say, do you have any questions for us? You always want to say yes to that question. This is going to be what makes you stand out because odds are these interviewers are going to ask each person that they interview very similar questions. And so this is your chance to ask them good questions, learn more about them, and have more of that conversational part of the interview. And so you want to have 3 or 4 good questions prepared. It's a great idea to have them written down in your notebook or your Padfolio that you took with you. That way you don't forget them, you don't blank and be like, oh, what were my questions? I can't remember. You've got them ready written down. You can just read them right off your notebook. And so it helps the interviewers remember you, helps you stand out. You don't want to be very generic with your questions. You don't just want to say something like, why did each of you want to work for this company? It's interesting, but you can be a little more specific and kind of make yourself shine a little more. Don't just Google, questions to ask at an interview because lots of people are going to do that. Come up with your questions, some things that you're genuinely curious about when it comes to working for this company. And so this is also your chance to learn more about them and the atmosphere. So some examples of good questions are, can you describe the day-to-day activities of this role? Odds are you've read the job description, but maybe there's things in that job description that aren't actually a part of this position that they're hiring for. That's just kind of a general description. Or there could be things that they left out. This gives you a chance to figure all of those things out and find out more about exactly what you'd be doing in the job if you did get this position. How would you define or measure success in this position? This is an awesome question because it shows the people that you're really considering how you can make yourself stand out if you got this job. It lets them also figure out, like, how do I measure success in this position? What do I do with my current employees that lets me know that they're doing a good job? And then can you tell me your favorite thing about this company and position and something you think could be improved? I think that's a nice question because it lets you hear some positives about the company. And it also gives you some insight into what may be some not so positive things about the company. You don't want to directly ask them, what are some things you don't like about this company? What are things you don't like about your job? Or what are the negatives? You still want to keep it kind of a positive attitude. And so wording it as something you think could be improved gives it the opportunity for growth for them. And it makes it feel like they're not talking bad about their company, which we always want to avoid. Salary questions can be a little tricky. You really want to wait until probably third or fourth interview when you start to talk about benefits and stuff that goes along with the position. Don't bring it up in your first interview, usually not even the second interview. You want to make sure that they don't think that you're focused on just the money aspect of it, because we all get jobs to make money and live our lives, but you want to make sure that you're focused on specifically your qualifications for the position. A great answer if they bring it up is a salary is negotiable for me if the position is a great fit. And you can ask them, what does the organization have budgeted for this position? And they may give you kind of a spectrum depending on like your experience, or you can look on websites like Glassdoor are really great for finding out what different people in your area that have similar positions make, so you know what's a fair offer at the end of the day. And then when the interview is coming to an end, always ask about what the next steps are going to be, and then ask them how and when you'll hear something. The how is very important. If they say they're going to email you, you'll know to be watching your email. If they say they're going to call you, you'll know to make sure that your phone is charged and your voicemail box has room just in case they call while you're in the shower and you miss it, things like that. And then always asking them when as well. Is it going to be, later today that I'm going to hear something? Is it going to be tomorrow? That gives you the chance to know how long is too long to when you should reach out to them and ask for an update. Next is after the interview. So just like at the beginning, if they're shaking hands, shake their hands again and thank them for their time once more. Let them know you're very grateful for them taking the time to chat with you and learn more about you and tell you more about the position. If after the interview you feel like the job's an even more perfect fit for you, tell them that. They want to know that after learning more, you're even more sure that you want to work for this company in this position. You're going to want to send a thank you note or an email to each person who interviewed you. You can ask them for business cards. You can find their emails with that from the recruiter or from a receptionist possibly. And be personal. This is why you want to take notes in your notebook during the interview. You don't want to just say, thank you for your time. I hope to hear back from you soon. That's very basic, and anyone could send that. Talk about something in that thank you note that you connected with during that interview, like, oh, I really enjoyed our talk about your time in college or something like that. And really, you can stand out a lot by sending this note. A handwritten note is always nice. If you don't have addresses or you don't have time, an email is perfectly fine too. Just make sure that it's personalized. Send an individual email to each person, and make sure that you don't send it all to one group and send them all an identical thank you email. Tailor it to each person that you talk to. And so key points for interviewing. Be confident again. Go in there knowing that they know you're qualified and they just want to learn more about you. Treat it like a conversation. It allows things to go so much more smoothly for you at the end of the day. Know the company and why you want to work there. Make sure you do that research into what they do, what they make, who the company is, what their values are. Lots of companies love to ask, which of our values connects with you the most or something like that. Make sure that you've done your research and your due diligence there. Dress appropriately. Make sure you wear pants. Practice your interview questions, especially those really common ones. The tell me about yourself question, why do you want to work for us? These are questions that you can almost guarantee 99 times out of 100 you're going to be asked in an interview. And so you have time to practice those answers and be prepared. Arrive early or log in early if it's virtual. Be grateful for their time and let them know that. Be honest. Don't lie in your interviews and make things up. Just be honest about situations. Always feel okay to tell them you don't know something. It's okay to admit that you don't know, but you can tell them, like, I'm not sure about the answer to that question, but I would love to learn more and find out, or I would love to learn that skill or something like that. Ask them questions. That's huge. You never want to leave an interview without asking questions. and then send that thank you note at the end or a thank you email.